Good morning, Sean here from Mountains Garage. Today's subject is the 9-inch Ford rear end. It seems really simple, but there's a lot of things you need to know before you can order a complete unit or even buy any parts for it. So let's check it out.
First, let's talk about why the 9-inch Ford is so popular and handy to work on. 100 years ago, this is what you got. This is a 1930 Model AA truck. And to work on this style rear end, you have to remove it from the vehicle and split it in half. Not much fun. And believe it or not, present day, this split design is still popular in stock cars. This is a quick change rear end based off that old Ford design. But again, to work on it, you got to split it in half out of the vehicle.
This is a carrier type differential, and to service it, all the parts are coming in and out through the cover. In the vehicle or out on the ground, either way, that's how you service it.
And this 9-inch Ford is a dropout style, where the gray piece, the center section, drops right out of the vehicle, so you can service it on the bench. Tri-5 Chevys, late 50s Oldsmobile and Pontiacs are also dropout style. The Tri-5 Chevy is a very weak unit. The Pontiac and Oldsmobile are much beefier, not quite as popular in the aftermarket. There are people that sell parts, but I'll take a 9-inch Ford.
This is one of the many reasons why I like the 9-inch Ford differential, because you can work on it on the bench. You can have spares laying around in any ratio you want, any type of differential. Now let's get into some details. We'll start with the carrier bearing size. This aluminum piece is my narrowing jig bolted in there, but this case is a 2.89 diameter carrier bearing. Ford used that in their low horsepower cars. The next step is 3.06 inch carrier bearing. They use that in their larger horsepower cars. Pretty popular yet today. The 3.25 is majority of your aftermarket cases, and if you're going to build something, pretty powerful, I like the 3 1/4. 3.81 is huge. You don't see them very often, but that is massive horsepower potential to harness with something like that. Now let's talk about the external part of the case. This is a single rib iron case. There's nothing special about it. There's millions and millions of them on the road. They're good for street rods, stock cars, something you're not going to impact the drive line a lot. Ford knew they needed something stronger. Here is a twin rib case. This one is an early one with lesser ingredients in the steel. Eventually they went to nodular iron, and there's an N cast in right there. This is actually a WAB case, 3.06 side bearing. They made a war case, which is 2.89 bearing. This is a step up from that, but still not great. This is an aftermarket case, 3 1/4 side bearing. That's the N I was talking about. They copied Ford just to identify it. Twin rib, very strong. This thing is massive. This is a twin rib aluminum case, also 3 1/4 side bearing. In this case, Yukon put their Y there, but very strong also. So when talking about the case, you need to know the material it's made out of, the bearing diameter for the carrier, and how strong the case itself is made as far as ribs and structure. Now let's move on to the pinion support. This is a cast pinion support, this black piece. It holds the pinion. What's nice about a 9-inch Ford is that comes in and out, and you actually shimmy a depth right here. So you can assemble the pinion into the pinion support on the bench, and then when you actually go to set up the depth of the ring and pinion, depth of the pinion, you just pull it in and out. It's really slick. This is an aluminum pinion support. Same as the cast, just lighter. Probably equally as strong. Does not seem to be a weak link. Incidentally, this is a 3 1/4 case aluminum housing, aluminum pinion support, and it has all the same parts is this cast pinion support. This is only 17 pounds heavier than this as a complete unit. To choose a pinion support, not only do you need to know the material, you need to know if you have a small or big pinion. Ford only comes in 4 basic type of ring and pinion sets. They have small pinion, big pinion, street temper, and pro gear, they call it, for racing. They're softer. The gear itself is actually softer. This is a street 8620 material ring and pinion. It was in a 632 70 Chevelle. 70 Chevelle with a 632, all steel. This thing had a lot of runs on it. It finally gave up. It's really not made to take that kind of impact, but it did for years and years. So they're pretty strong. NASCAR runs an 8620 gear set, a street gear set, if you will. This is a NASCAR gear set. It is rem polished. It's beautiful. It's like a piece of jewelry, but it is 8620 steel. There used to be old wives' tales about running the pro gear in the street, and you couldn't get across the street before you wore it out. But now, with drag week and stuff, they've pretty much proved that those fast cars are driving 1,000 miles with a pro gear. So if you choose to run one in a street car, I think you'll be okay. Another fact about the pro gear is they're not quiet. They don't even try to make them quiet. Your street gears, when they run them into the machine, they go for the optimum amount of silence as you can get out of a ring and pinion, and they're pretty quiet. A lot of aftermarket gears I'm disappointed in, even though they're an 8620 street gear instead of the 9310 pro gear. They're still pretty noisy. On the left is the small pinion nut. On the right is the big pinion nut. It becomes glaringly obvious when you look at the rear end which one you have. That is huge, and that's very average. This is the good example of a small pinion. The nut fits nicely down in its hole, where the big pinion nut is typically hanging out because it's huge. This is the inner pinion bearing that goes against the pinion. That's a stock Ford. That's a big pinion. Nestled nicely in the middle, what I don't have one to demonstrate, is the Daytona size. That's the nickname for it. The Daytona pinion support takes a nice medium-sized bearing. That's what these are. It's a very popular choice. Adequately strong. It'll get the job done. Now let's talk about the differential itself. 28, 31, 33, 35, and 40 spline are what's popular. So you need to know what spline count your axles are to choose a differential. From an open carrier to the clutch type positive tractions to a lot of aftermarket clutch type, or there's different worm style differentials. Those are all great for low horsepower stuff, but at a certain point, you have 2 options. You can run a Detroit locker like this, or you can run a spool. If you're drag racing, you're going to choose a spool. It's the safest bet. These are not as reliable, and you don't want one tire to stop driving. But from NASCAR on down, this is an actual NASCAR Detroit locker. And they're an excellent choice for the street. They're kind of noisy because they have to actually unlock to differentiate, to go around a corner. But believe it or not, it's a choice that they choose to run in circle track cars, which they claim it causes a certain driving feel that they like. So you need to know what you want for a differential, as well as everything else. Let's talk about the rear end yoke. There's a lot of choices there. You need to know your spline count. There's only 2, 28 and 35. 28 is a small pinion. 35 is a big pinion. You need to know what U-joint series you're going to want. If you watch my drive shaft video, you know I've already chosen a 1350. It makes my life easy. This is a short wide. It's short, and it's wide for the 1350. And this is a forged yoke. It's very nice and strong with a U-joint strap. They also make a bolt-on strap style yoke in 1350. That's pretty popular also. I'm not sure which one is stronger. As you can see, to even order a dropout 9-inch Ford section, a pig,
a differential, whatever you want to call it. You need to know a lot of stuff, or it's not going to fit in your car. You need to know what you have or what you want. And this is a case where bigger is usually better. Now let's talk about the housing itself. You need to know if you want a centered pinion or a centered housing. For aesthetics, if you look under the back of the car, the centered housing looks better, but it offsets the pinion to the passenger side, which is not a bad thing. A lot of times your engine is offset an inch. That's about what the measurement or the offset of the pinion would be. I prefer the centered housing myself. You need to know how wide, wheel flange to wheel flange, is the easiest way to determine what your rear end is going to fit or not. A lot of people want to measure different places. It's really confusing. All that really counts is where the wheels bolt on. Brake offset is the dimension from the outer weld-on flange on the housing to the outer part of the flange where the brake drum slides on right here. Early Big Ford is 2.36. Late Big Ford is 2.50, 2.5. Those are the two most common ones for a Ford housing. You have to choose which one you want. It matters. They have different bolt patterns, so your brake kit is going to be different as far as the brake offset I mentioned and the actual bolt flange on the weld-on housing. This is a late Big Ford weld-on housing end. Bolt pattern, 3/8 bolts, and it's different than the early Big Ford. Either one's a good choice. This tool is called a dog bone for obvious reasons. It is used, it bolts into your housing that you're going to make, and you determine that's the center line of the housing, that's the pinion offset. That's how much you're going to get. If you center the housing, the pinion's going to be offset to the passenger side that much. If you want a centered pinion, then the housing's going to be offset that much. Pretty simple, but it's confusing. This is where the actual cut would be, like it says. It's a handy little tool called the dog bone. You use that in conjunction with the narrowing jig to build your own houses. All right, that pretty much covers it for today. It gives you a little bit of insight of what you need to know to even get the parts in your hands. The actual assembly is a breeze on a 9/8 Ford. At least you're standing up here in the shop, not laying under the car. And the adjustments are really easy. I like that. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Take her easy.